So welcome, man. We're so glad to have you. We've done a couple of these calls with a few friends around the world. You remember Jen Srail, Amy's old roommate. She's in Cambodia. So she's zoomed in with us. Didn't we do one other?
Canada.
Yes, Canada. Hosanna here is interested in learning about ministry in Canada. So each of the students in the class have picked a different country that they want to do a deep dive into. And as we go through Christopher Wright's book on the people of God, they're kind of looking for evidence of God at work in that particular country. So Bethany here, your niece's friend, is exploring Germany and wanted to connect her with a real German and somebody who's doing some ministry in Germany. So Dwayne and I met in right here at CSU 26 years ago. We were roommates for a season, and that was a blast, and have remained friends for more than 2 decades. My wife and I have been able to visit him and do ministry there together 3 times now in Germany, which has been so cool. So Dwayne, greet us, tell these guys a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yeah, where exactly are you guys in Jackson Hall now?
224. I think we had English class in here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so I'm Dwayne. It is 9 p.m. here in Germany, so our day is winding down. But for Paulie Mac, you know, I'll stay up late and hang out with you guys anytime.
Nice.
We've got 2 kids. My wife and I met there at BBC CSU as well, and got married after we graduated. Then came here to Germany. We've got an 18-year-old son. In Germany, you know, one thing that's different is there's lots of different kind of schooling tracks. So Seattle finished one track with 10th grade and then continued on to another track. So he's gonna be going through 13 grades, and then he'll have a degree that if he chooses to, he can go to university with. So you've probably heard, I mean, I know it's kind of an American social thing, especially you guys as college kids, there's a lot of discussion of free college or free university. And Germany has free university, but one thing that they don't tell you or isn't discussed much is that in order to qualify for that, you have to do a lot of like really difficult schooling. So it's like free if you can jump through all the hoops to get to the free university. So that we weed people out or discourage people by making it really difficult to get the diploma that qualifies you for it.
Sure.
And then my daughter Cypress is 16 years old, and she's in 11th grade. So life is getting interesting for us with family-wise.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about Germany and our lives here, but I wanted to ask you, want each of you to give me the most German thing you can think of, and I'm gonna rate it 1 to 10 of how typical or how accurate your conception of Germany is. So this is like a stereotype, a German stereotype. It could be like a thing or a personality trait, or just tell me the most German thing you can think of, and I'll give you a rating of how accurate it is.
Beer.
Leave it to Bethany.
Yeah, that is probably about a 9 on accuracy.
Wow.
Super typical of Germans is beer. So you can drink at 16 here in Germany. But one of the kind of interesting things is because it's so common, like the whole mystique of it is totally gone. So I think Americans, it almost becomes like the forbidden fruit for Americans, you know, and so then they're always trying to find ways to drink, and teenagers and all that. And here, like, drinking is no big deal. It's not nearly as common for especially teenagers to just go get plastered, because they've been drinking since they were like 10. And so it's not nearly like the rebellion or the like crazy thing to do that it kind of is in America. So beer is yes, but in a very different way than in America.
Huh.
Who else got a German stereotype?
Sauerkraut.
Yeah, I'll give you a 6.5 on that one. It's definitely German. Definitely German, but not always. You know what's interesting? Sauerkraut isn't nearly as sour in Germany as it is in America. Like, it's very mild here. It's actually delicious.
I mean, I like American sauerkraut, so.
You might be disappointed because it's very mild in Germany. What about the young man right over Paul's right shoulder?
Aaron,
I'm trying to think.
come on, what comes to mind when you think of Germany?
Things that have already been said. So,
Beer and sauerkraut.
Okay.
well, I guess a cultural stereotype I've heard is that everyone, so in contrast to after World War II and the events of World War II, I've heard that people are very, very, they're very friendly, and they're very like, they don't like their past.
That's a good one. Yeah. It's a pretty sensitive topic. There's laws about, like, it's illegal to deny the Holocaust. It's illegal. You can't like draw or display a swastika in Germany. Yeah, so it's a pretty sensitive topic. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the Seinfeld soup Nazi. That's probably before your time, but those kind of jokes just don't go over very well here in Germany. You don't talk about, like, the word Nazi is kind of thrown around casually or even comically in America, and it's not thrown around here at all. So that's a good one.
That's good. What do you think, Emily?
I guess a stereotype of people maybe like blunt or harsh because of like the language, so it seems like maybe they're more forward and
Angry.
maybe a little bit angry.
Have you
There's
seen that YouTube video about like German compared to other European languages?
Yeah. Yes. It's hysterical. Germans are very direct. That is actually very true. Like, they don't beat around the bush. They just tell you what they think. Which, like, there's a lot of cultures like real honor based, and so you don't ever like shame someone or even like disagree with them. And Germany is not that culture. Germany, they almost pride themselves on like being blunt and direct and just telling you exactly what they're thinking. So that's a great one.
Huh.
Yeah, very good. You guys are like Germany experts. I'm just trying to gauge how much I need to tell you about Germany, but beer, sauerkraut, and direct. Got two more back
Afraid
there?
to ask Joe.
Yeah, 2 more.
2 more. Wait till you have an answer, Joe. Don't start talking until you have something.
I have two answers.
You have 2, all right.
One, I'm not sure if it's an American thing, but one is Biscoff and the other is Putin. I'm not sure
Biscoff.
if it's Russian.
I don't recognize Biscoff. Is it a brand name?
It is,
Isn't those biscuits?
yeah,
Those
they're
little
those like
chocolate
cinnamon
biscuits that you get on the airplane. Are those German?
On the way to Germany. I don't know.
What was your other one? Putin? Like the
Putin?
leader?
Poutine.
Like the
Poutine?
French
It's
fries
like-
with cheese curds and gravy on. That's
Oh.
That's
Oh,
Canadian.
that's Canadian.
Yeah.
He's a Germany novice.
That's all
You
right.
got anything, Rose?
Yeah, cars.
Oh,
Next
Yeah.
one, cars.
Volkswagens.
Oh, that's a good one, Rose. Yeah, actually.
Anybody know what Volkswagen means in German?
Oh, I used to know this.
I already never knew it.
I don't
Yeah,
know
we
this
know
anymore.
it's
Dang it.
Like I saw that.
Wagen, sounds like wagon, which means like vehicle. And Volk is the people's, or the people.
The people's
So
way.
the people's vehicle. And you can kind of tell by the sound of it, it comes from the Nazi times that they started the people's vehicle.
Uh-huh.
Anybody know what the B in BMW stands for?
British.
Oh no.
Why?
Bavarian.
We're talking to-
Yes, Paul,
What did he-
Bavarian.
Bavarian.
Ah.
Bavarian Motor Works.
Yeah, Bavarian Motor Works. We actually live in Bavaria, which if you think about like Texas, you know how Texas is the biggest, well, it's the second biggest state, but everyone from Texas will tell you it's the biggest state. And people are more proud of being Texans than they are about being Americans. Like all of that is true of Bavaria. They're Bavarians first and Germans second. They're the biggest state in Germany. There's 16 states in Germany, and Bavaria is the biggest or the largest. It's probably the most conservative, like the most traditional and conservative state in America or Germany, and it's also the most southern. So it's the one all the way down here in the south. So let me tell you a little bit about.
I'm surprised you didn't say soccer.
Oh, I don't follow sports.
Yeah,
Hey,
I do.
I was a little disappointed that no one mentioned soccer. Soccer's a very big German thing. So after all that conversation about Germany, I don't know if Paul has already kind of introduced you to us at all, but we're talking all this about Germany, and surprise, our church, our ministry isn't even primarily with Germans. So our main focus of our ministry is an English speaking ministry with soldiers and their families that are stationed, American soldiers and their families that are stationed over here in Germany. So there's kind of a double dynamic. We live like Germans, we shop, and kids go to German schools and everything, but then our ministry side of our lives is very much English and American, and would look pretty familiar to you if you came and visited our church. It would probably feel or look pretty familiar to what you guys experience on a Sunday or on a worship or being part of a church body or church family. So yeah, we have like men's Bible studies, women's Bible studies, kids. We have a youth group on Sunday nights. I preach in English, we sing in English, but we do have probably about 10% of the church is German speaking or German nationals. So we try to include that in our services. When I have my main points of my sermon in English on the screen, and then we'll also have it translated into German, so that any German speakers can see what the main points of the talk are. We'll do that with songs too. Like as we're singing, we'll do 3 verses in English, and then we'll sing a verse of the same song in German and a chorus in German. So we're trying to really be intentional about making sure German speakers know that it's not just okay that they're there, but like we want them there and they're welcome, and we know they're a part of our church, and we appreciate that they're part of our church.
is that is that relatively new, Dwayne? Because I don't know that I necessarily remember that from the times I was with you.
Yeah, that's kind of been a growing thing that we're trying to do, is how can we include and welcome Germans more intentionally.
Huh.
it's funny how casual things, we don't really realize what outsiders kind of see or read. So on our website for our church, we had a little like, bio paragraph or just a little paragraph welcoming people. And we're like, we're a off post, because post is like the army post. We're an off post church for soldiers and their families. We'd love to have you come and join us. Thinking about like a military family reading it. And then a few years ago, a German lady emailed me or emailed the email address on the list. And she was like, I know you're for soldiers. Am I allowed to visit? Would it be okay if I visited? And I was like, of course, we'd love to have you visit. But just didn't realize like that saying we're an off-post church for Americans without meaning to sends the message that we're not for Germans or we're not for local nationals. And so we quickly reworded that sentence to make it more inclusive and welcoming to local nationals as well. What about military? You guys have any experience or connections or family with people in the military?
Most of my family has been in the military at some point, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. And in the front row, you shook your head yes as well?
Yeah, my brother's in the Air Force, but his wife and one of my other sister-in-laws their dad have both been stationed in Germany at some.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, if someone does the extended period of time in the military, most likely they're going to be stationed somewhere overseas. And Germany and Korea are two of the biggest overseas destinations that you're going to be sent to. There's some in Italy and Japan and a lot of different places in the world, but Germany is one of the biggest. Why do you think, just quick geopolitical question, why do you think we're still in Germany 50 years later? Oh no, not 50, 70 years later. I still think it's 1990. Anybody know why we're still here?
It's because of the Berlin Wall thing.
Yeah,
I can't
the
remember
Berlin
the whole
Wall.
conflict,
but that came down in 1989.
um,
So I mean, really, we're here more as much for American interests as we are for German interests. Like we're able to definitely help Europe. NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty something. But really we're here to have like force projection around the world, and so the Middle East or other places having our armed forces around the world helps America as much as it does the other countries. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So one of the questions Paul mentioned is like, how did we get from BBC, being a student at BBC, to being here in Germany?
And before you get to that, don't take forever to do it, but even before you came to BBC, you were part of the missions program. Most of these, not all of them, but most of these students are now in the intercultural studies program. So even as a high school student or early college, you kind of knew that there was some kind of global inkling. And so I guess talk us through some of that, because that's where some of these guys are. And then just wondering, what does it look like to get from here to there? And I know that, with everybody's story, rarely is that a straight line. So just share a little bit about your initial kind of the seeds of that, and then how God kind of grew that over time.
Well, I was born and raised over here in Germany. My parents became missionaries in 1976, which is 45 years ago, and still live here in Germany. So that missions, especially Germany, was, I was just kind of grew up with it as part of my life and part of my thinking. My wife, Daylin, grew up in Western Pennsylvania, Clarion, out on Interstate 80. And she was exposed to it in church and things like that, but then she went on a missions trip to Bolivia, South America. And that really was what changed her life and really kind of opened her eyes to missions and both the excitement and also the need for missions. So I think experiencing it for yourself is huge for both of us. Seeing a mission field for ourselves, experiencing and living and seeing what it's like to do missions and be in missions was really influential in putting it in our hearts. Then the question is, how do you actually get there? Obviously, but just the interest of being interested in missions or wanting to do missions. I think seeing it and experiencing it is huge. What about you guys? Have any of you seen or experienced missions for yourself? Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Go ahead,
Um,
Bethany.
I was on 2 mission trips. I went to Malawi, Africa, and then the Czech Republic in Europe. So yeah, it was cool to see 2 different cultures and to see like how God's at work in such different places, and to see like how missions is like similar but different, I guess, in ways, like depending on the people and stuff like that. So
Very cool. Do you remember where you were in the Czech Republic?
what grade I was in?
Where?
Where?
In-
I don't know how to say it. České Budějovice, something. Yeah, I don't know how to say it. But
That's okay. It's a difficult language. We live like 45 minutes from the Czech border.
okay,
So
wow.
we're pretty close to Czech.
That's cool.
Any of the rest of you, what other countries have you guys? And I mean, there's missions as well in America, obviously.
I went to Madrid. for 6
Oh, cool. Do they stay up really late there? That's what my missionary friend in
Yes.
Madrid said. It's
They can stay
insane.
until like 3 or 4 in the morning.
That's great.
That sounds like college.
I don't stay up that late.
It's not me.
It's more fun there, it's less stressful. You're not staying up to do homework.
Where have you been, Emily?
Mission script.
I knew what's your plan for this summer?
Possibly going to Chile.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
I was in
In the
Liberia.
what trip?
Huh? I was in
I
Liberia
saw
for
that.
2 weeks.
Which country? Liberia?
Yeah.
Wow. And the two guys?
Nah.
I've been to Alaska. I went up to Alaska
Cool.
for 2 weeks.
You been anywhere, Aaron?
I don't get out much.
Aaron doesn't get out
Oh.
much.
He's been to school. He's been to here.
Yeah, I think if you take those opportunities, I know it's expensive and I know it's difficult and there's a lot of other things going on with college and you've got to work over the summers and there's a long list of obstacles, but do what you can to overcome those obstacles and take missions trips. Obviously, a mission trip is like a first date, like you're not going to really be seeing missions in the nitty gritty and the boring mundane. Like usually missionaries will try to show you the best side of themselves and the best side of the mission field. And so it's what you see in a 2-week mission trip is not what missions, like true missions life is often like, but it exposes you to what God is doing. It exposes you to the culture. And so it's a great experience. And I would really encourage you to take any opportunities that you can and to overcome any obstacles that you're able to get out and see it for yourself. So Daylin and I had a heart for missions, but it was really interesting. I mean, Paul mentioned that he came over here what was that summer? Was that after we graduated, Paul, when?
The first time was, yeah, after we got married, it was in 2000, we came over, Amy and I
Yeah.
came over before any of us had kids.
The four of us were all back in the States. And my parents were gonna come on furlough, and so they asked the four of us to come over to Germany and help them with the church and like kind of cover the ministry while they were back here. And so all four of us came together. And I think all four of us kind of had a similar experience. Like that's a neat ministry. That's great. But that's not what God is calling us to do with our lives. Like, you know, you see things and you're like, that's wonderful, but that's not what I'm gonna do. And it was for us, Daylin and I wanted to go somewhere almost like more traditional missions, like somewhere needy, you know, like a poor country where we were doing kind of more like helping needy people. And so it just didn't really feel like this was mission-y enough for us. And then, so we actually were interested in going to Romania. We both have done trips to Romania before, and it kind of fit in our minds what we thought God was calling us to. But what was really interesting was, as we started pursuing that, I wanted to be a pastor really badly. Like that's really what I feel God has called and gifted me to do. But you guys have probably talked in missions, you know, the growing trend with good reason is that they don't want Americans. The idea is not that Americans should go like be pastors around the world, because as Americans, we probably know the culture we're going to least of everyone. And so instead of going and being pastors, it makes a lot more sense to go and train local nationals to be the pastors and to be the people reaching their own people. And so the trend in missions is for missionaries not to go and do the ministry, but to go and teach nationals to do the ministry to their own people and to reach their own people, which philosophically I agree with. But practically, that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to train someone else to be a pastor. I wanted to be a pastor myself. Like I wanted to do the work of pastoring. So it was like, how do I do the work of pastoring in a mission setting when philosophically the American shouldn't be the one coming in to do the work? And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, I could do that in Germany because there are Americans there. And I'd be reaching my own people. Like I understand them, I get them, and I could still be a pastor and be a missionary. And so God kind of brought us 180 degrees back over here, where we really didn't think we were going to be coming back here, but God changed our hearts and showed us what a perfect fit it is, and we've really loved it. Kind of like, I mean, you guys are in a college setting right now. There's a lot of similarities with a college setting with our military ministry, because people are stationed here in Germany traditionally for 3 years. So we get to know people, we try to pour into their lives and disciple them or evangelize and get them saved and grow and baptized. And then they leave and they go somewhere else. And so, you know, like a college ministry, you get people and some of them stay for 1 year, some stay for 2, 3, some stay all the way for 4 years. But even at 4 years, then they're gone and you start over with a new group of people. So that's what we face as well. Just constantly starting over and constantly pouring our lives into new people and making connections with new people. Any questions pop up as I'm monologuing up here for 20 minutes?
Well, I can segue to, you know, some more of what we talked about. Just help us get a sense of, you know, how. It's interesting in your context because a lot of it is with Americans, but you also do have kind of a foot in Germany as well. How do you see God at work there? You know, what's some of the evidence of God's people being this movement that Jesus started, you know, 2,000 years ago, that doesn't rest on our shoulders, but we're invited into it. What's some of the, what are some of the things that that are strong in the German church, some of the things that may be lacking in the German church, or even in, you know, your mini American church within Germany?
Yeah. That's a good question. So we talked about things that are typical German. When we talk about theology and I say Germany, anything come to you guys' minds with Germany and theology?
Martin Luther.
Yes, good, thank you. Yep, Martin Luther's huge, very big. I mean, worldwide, obviously. October 31st just came and passed, which is the anniversary of him nailing the 95 Thesis. So, and that still has a huge impact on Germany. Germany is pretty much split, like the Christians, however you define that in Germany, would be split between Catholics and Lutherans. What about after Martin Luther? Anything? Can you guys think of anything or know anything else that happened in Germany theologically after Luther and after the Reformation?
I don't know
Have you
timelines. My main thought, not theologically, but like Johannes Gutenberg inventing the printing press.
Yep. Yeah, huge. That's a big,
And the first thing he printed was the Bible, am I right?
at least parts of the Bible. Yeah. Have you guys heard of the term higher criticism? Exposed to that in like your theology courses? We're talking about like the Bible. Higher criticism would be a study of like, where did the Bible come from? And, you know, like in Genesis, there's these arguments about Moses didn't really write Genesis. It's all these different sources that have been brought together, and you've probably heard of Q. Anyway, does Q ring a bell? Like they say the Q source. Q is actually for a German word named Quelle, like what's the fountain or what's the source, and they've come up with this Q is supposed to be this unknown source that brought about a lot of Genesis. I say all of that just to say that Germany not only is the motherland of the Reformation, but then after that really became the motherland or the fatherland of liberal theology and theology questioning the Bible and basically tearing apart the Bible and saying this part is right and this part is wrong and this part is accurate and this part is not accurate. And so the theological life in Germany kind of went from really strong and passionate with Luther and the Reformation to really cold and almost like scientific and ration and reason is more worshipped than spirit. And so Germany has kind of been struggling with that. There's a very rational, like most people would traditionally call themselves Christians or would identify as Christians, but they don't actually believe the Bible. They don't actually believe that Jesus is born of a virgin or that he was actually raised from the dead. And so like, how can you call yourself a Christian if you don't believe in the resurrection? How can you call yourself a Christian if you don't believe in the Bible? So you can kind of imagine how like substantial that Christian faith really is. In the middle of all that though, like those things don't give you meaning to life. Those things don't give you answers to life's questions. And so in the middle of kind of this empty shell of Christianity, there's also a growing desire of like, man, what are we missing? What's wrong in our life? And Germans seek that in a lot of different ways, but one of them is in coming back to legitimate, true vibrant Christianity. And there's absolutely a true church that is living and growing here in Germany, and that it's neat to see and neat to be part of. The American like kind of subculture that we're part of is also really cool, because you get people away from their homes and away from like what their comfort zones, and outside of their comfort zones we really see people grow a lot spiritually. I think like when I was sitting where you were sitting, one of the reasons I didn't want to come back to Germany is because I felt like no one knew what my dad was doing or my parents were doing over here. I felt like he wasn't really making a difference in the world, you know, like I had these grandiose ideas of I want to be president of something, or I want to be sitting on boards, because everybody that came to chapel was like, this is what they did, and this is the board, or you know, the president or the vice president, or kind of these big things that they were doing. And I just felt like, man, no one's inviting my dad to speak anywhere. No one cares, no one knows what he's doing over there in Germany. But then when we started like pursuing coming back to Germany, we started making contact with a lot of people who had been through the church over here, you know, like cycled through Germany while my parents were over here ministering. And it was so eye-opening to hear them talk about like my life. God changed my life while I was in Germany. Those 3 years in Germany were so pivotal in my life. And I've never been part of a church like that church in Germany. Like we just heard that over and over and over again. And if God is calling us to make disciples, then it felt like that's a lot more important than titles and positions and fame and notoriety. Is am I actually making a difference in people's lives? And we really see that happening, because people are away from what they're used to, they're away from their home, they're kind of like they're at a place where they need God and they need people around them, and God just does some amazing things in people's lives while they're over here for these years. I wanted to go through, Paul, you sent me some of those sections from the book.
Yeah, just the chapter titles. So we've kind of been tackling one of those each week, just because it fit
Okay.
with the sequence of the semester. And what he does in the book is just kind of show how, you know, whether it was Old Testament Israel or the New Testament church, here are some things that the people of God are supposed to be about. And, you know, everything from creation care and blessing the nations and bearing witness to the one true God. And then more recently, you know, proclaiming, you know, the salvation that comes through Jesus. And so we've just been exploring those themes, how that gospel is a lot bigger than any one thing. And then we're just trying to look for those in action in the different countries these guys are exploring. So yeah, did any of those jump out at you or stand out especially?
Yeah, a couple of them. I mean, so care for creation, that's huge. It's huge in Europe, probably even more so in Germany. And that's cool, because there's a lot of places where we have to disagree with culture, and we have to kind of like stand against the popular message around us. And so for us, that's been like an easy win for us as a church, of like, you know what, this is a place we can agree with our culture that we need to be doing more to take care of God's creation. This is a place where we can do what God has told us to do, and the community around us thinks it's great, and like actually is like, yeah, we agree with you, that's awesome. So we had a scientist, a Christian scientist come. It was a ocean biologist, and come and kind of do like a weekend seminar for us, and then connected with our village and town about cleaning up garbage around popular areas and things like that. And they sent out like a camera crew to take pictures and put it on their Facebook page, and like they were really excited about it and really wanted it to be like known and publicized. And that for us was like, man, why aren't we doing more of this? Because this is there's so many messages that we have to preach that we know are difficult for people to hear. Let's also just take the easy points when we can get them as well. It's kind of interesting, the blessing to the nations, and there was another one, represent God to the world. That's kind of I was thinking about that as like for soldiers, like, yeah, I guess sometimes they bring blessing to the nations. Sometimes they also bring like weapons and guns and tanks to the nations. What do you guys think the military experience of being a blessing to the nations, how do you think that those two things play together?
What it kind of reminds me of is when someone were to threaten one of God's people, God wouldn't just say, "Oh, it's okay, you're forgiven." No, he'd like go to war. So it's like those in Germany are protecting their people against those who threaten to take that peace away from them.
Yeah, I think for the people, there's a lot of people that Americans, and specifically American soldiers, are like heroes, like they're the ones who rescued them. They're the ones who kicked the oppressors out of their country. So there's a lot of people in the world that the American soldier is a hero to, and someone that they love. Obviously, there's two sides to that coin. There's the people who are kicked out, or the people who are attacked don't love American soldiers so much and don't have such a positive view of American soldiers. So just, politically, there's times we've done really, really well and like really made a great name for America. And I mean, obviously that's very different than the church, but Christians being part of the military, I've had to kind of think through that and try to help soldiers, like, can you be a good Christian and be a soldier? Can those two things coexist and happen at the same time? And then, like, how you represent God, I think that's a huge thing too, that we try to talk to our soldiers about a lot, is they are lights in a very dark place, and they need to be an example. They need to show people what godly soldiering looks like. I think Christians need to be not infiltrating, that sounds probably too militaristic. They need to be taking part in every part of society, in every part of culture, so that we show people what a Christian athlete looks like. We show people what a Christian scientist looks like, what a Christian politician, what a Christian butcher, looks like. We need to be incarnating the gospel in every area of life and ministry. I know class is almost over, right?
They would stay all day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is almost over.
Let me just say that, I guess, as a closing, Paul and I have a friend, Buddy Rathmel, who is does a ministry called BAM, Business as Mission. And the idea is, I mean, there's a lot of times the question is, okay, I want to be involved in missions. How do I do that? Because funding is always going to be a question, like, how do I raise the funding to live as a missionary? and it's difficult. And so one of the things that I think, obviously Paul sets an example for this, right? Is to have a occupation, to have a job that allows you to live missionally, which we try to inculcate that into these Americans that we're working with. Like, the army has sent you to Germany. We have all these Christians who are being sent to Europe, to Italy, to Korea, to Japan. If those Christians in the military are thinking missionally, then we have missionaries in all of those countries. If they're just thinking selfishly, they're not going to do anything missionally. But if they're thinking of themselves as missionaries sent by the military to all these countries, then the church doesn't have to finance to send them. You know, the government can send them out for the church. It's the same business wise. Your missional life doesn't have to be, I'm going to raise money and go somewhere with an official title of missionary. It can also mean I'm going to be a business person who gets sent overseas. And when I get sent overseas, I'm going to dig in and be part of what God is doing in that country, in that place. So just, I'm sure you're hearing all of this already, but I would just encourage you, be thinking outside of the box of the missionary who goes and raises support to go in traditional missions, which is, I mean, that's what I've done and that's what I love. But there's a lot of other ways that you can also do missions besides just that model.
And that takes us back, right? I mean, we had that conversation near the beginning about doing missions or living on mission, right? Whatever it is we're called to, we're the people of God. And here's what the people of God have been about for centuries. And so let's be about the same things.
Absolutely.
Bethany, why don't you pray for Dwayne and his church and his ministry there, and then we'll wrap up.
Dear God, I thank you for this time, and I thank you for Dwayne taking the time to come talk to us about his ministry in Germany and just what work you're doing over there, God. I just pray to continue to bless him and his family, Lord, and continue to protect them and guide them, that they can just continue to glorify you, and that they can continue to work in the people's lives around them, the military people, and just people they interact with every day. And I just pray that we will all remember to live missionally, no matter what circumstance or situation we're in, God, that we can just remember to serve you through it all of it. I pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Have a great day, guys. I'm going to
Thanks.
bed.
You don't have to go just yet. Give me one more second. I just want to stop the recording. You guys can go and just remember our plans for Friday, which don't include coming to class.